Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is the Adapting Pop Culture panel that I am just assisting with. So, hi, Natasha. You are running this panel for us. So,
No.
you wanna take it from here and set the terms of this arrangement?
All right. Well, my name is Natasha Tuskovich. I love RPGs, and I have spent my favorite ones to run are ones where it's about the story and it's set in a world that I love, and I love fandoms. So I really like. Also, I really like things where it's not so much about the rules; it's about the narrative and the story and the characters. So I love adapting pop culture in very kind of in ways that make sense for the story I want to tell and let people explore being a character in that world rather than just kind of following a rule book for something. So that's kind of how I like to go about it, and that's what we're going to be talking about.
Thanks. And I'm Kelly Clark. I'm the host of Dork Tales, and also am a professor of storytelling on occasion, and am a big old pop culture nerd who did a master's on atomic warfare in film, where I got to reference things like Godzilla versus the Hulk in an actual paper that got me a master's degree. So I'm a big dork. So I think adaptation and pop culture are kind of my bag too. So I'm here to add anything that you need, and really excited to have you here. Quick notice before we begin that today's events are absolutely free, but if you do have a little bit of extra money, we do have a suggested $5 donation over at Extra Life. Extra Life is a charity that gives money to sick kids, basically. 100% of the proceeds go to the BC Children's Hospital. We get none of it, and it is a tax write-off for you if you live in Canada or America. I'm not sure beyond that, but check your local tax laws. You might be able to claim it if you're in the Commonwealth as well, and you help kids, which is pretty cool. And if you don't like kids, it gets us like a t-shirt, I think, eventually, if you give us enough money. So, we don't take money, but I will never turn down a t-shirt. Okay, and with that, it's all you. Well, I guess I'll be here too, but yeah, it's all you.
Okay, let me Okay, so okay, let me pull the slideshow on mine. Okay,
That's okay.
so you can switch to the next one if you want.
All right. Boop.
All right, so this one just kind of covers some of the stuff. We'll go over mindset, how to think about what to think about when you're trying to adapt a property, kind of some resources. Kelly probably has some good ideas for this too.
Oh, totally.
Systems that are helpful, how to start planning, and kind of detailed questions to answer, what kind of stuff to you need to be thinking about. We'll go through story structure, which I know Kelly has a lot to contribute on that, as well as some stuff on. You can switch to the next slide. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry that you don't.
Yeah, I'm like scrolling on my page, and I'm like, oh wait, no. So we'll also go through character creation, how to help your players build their characters and prepare them for the world you're creating, and then kind of some extra stuff that you should keep in mind. What's helpful as you go to make it a nice immersive environment.
Yep. And if you want to see a good example of this, you can actually check out our last Extra Life stream, which was in November. They're all up on our YouTube page, youtube.com/dorktales. And Natasha ran a game there that was a Sailor Moon game, which was a really fun game. And you should go watch it for no other reason than you get to see me in a Sailor Fuku with incredibly neon dyed yellow hair. I lost a bet. So, all right, ready when you are. So what page are we on?
You can go to the page. It should be blue and say mindset at the top.
Mindset. All right.
All right. Okay. So I can because I'm looking at the Zoom screen, I can't see when you change things. So just let me know when it's
all changed.
Perfect. All right. So first up, basically, for me, I always pick properties that are just things that I really like, the world that I always wanted to exist in. But you have to be careful because some properties, especially if it's designed for a solo character vessel, like the original story was very one character, it can be difficult to adapt into a group RPG that actually makes sense and is fun for all the characters, because you can end up with something where every character is like, kind of, we mentioned in our last panel, trying to play like the lone wolf or like the only main character. So I don't know, Kelly, if you have any like kind of what you use as criteria for picking a property to adapt?
So when I want to adapt something for a game, what I first off do is find what my players are really going to appreciate. Right now in our Shards of Nirn game, we're doing a Harry Potter parody right now because I know that we all grew up with Harry Potter. Oh, hello, dog. Sorry, my dog just is licking my arm. Anyway, hi.
So good.
He's a good boy. Anything like that, I would look at something that gets people excited about it, but is also not, I don't know, sacrosanct. Getting the right mindset is really important. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like picking something, say, I have a book on my shelf right there that is the Witcher role-playing game. But The Witcher's about, like, it's about the dude.
About the Witcher.
Yeah, right? Like, I mean, sure, the show tries to make it a bit about Ciri and Yennefer, but let's be fair, it's about Henry Cavill in the bath. And, you know, it is.
I mean, that's what it should be about anyways.
I mean, if you put it on rewind, it always is. But, so you do have to balance that out and make sure that it's accessible for an entire party or a group, unless you are running a one-on-one game, which can happen. It's rare.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that sounds good to me. Just tell me when we need to switch sides.
So we'll stay on this one for a bit.
Sure.
So kind of next up, like kind of what are the mechanics of the world you're looking at? Are you looking at a world that obviously has like fighting? Like, are they superheroes? Do they fight monsters? Do they do battles? Are there, you know, wars? Are there armies? Are there something that's really easy to adapt into a fighting game? Or is it something that's more of a social type of game? Are your characters going to be in situations where they have to talk their way out of problems and solve things like that? Because this is going to really affect how you build your story, and also what kind of players are going to be interested in the first place.
There are lots of players who are only interested in things like Dungeons and Dragons because it's what they know and that's what they're comfortable with, and they paid a lot of money for the books. Something that I think you should really consider in these as well is let's be honest, most of the stuff that we're adapting, we're not adapting like the Full House role-playing game, which you use D&D just like you would with Golden Girls, okay? The Golden Girls, like the ladies in the Golden Girls are the ideal party. You got the tank, anyway, that's the point. You should really think of, because most of the properties we have some type of magical element to them. So you need to think on whether or not the magical portion of it, be it real magic or be it like fighting game mechanics, are hyper-specific, hard mechanics. Say like, I would say like Harry Potter. The spells work the same way every time in theory, versus something like Lord of the Rings, where what the hell is Gandalf even doing? It's magic. It kind of works when it works, and it does what it does. That isn't as potentially as well suited for D&D, and things like Avatar, like The Last Airbender, are way more suited towards more fluid systems, in my opinion. So you just got to be mindful of that when you're doing it. D&D is a great engine, but it doesn't work for everything. Or you spend all your time trying to figure out, like, is a Hadouken a fireball or is it a firebolt? You'll take all your time trying to work out the mechanics instead of playing the game.
Oh, exactly. Like, depending on how you want to run the game, like, do you love extensive, detailed systems with lots of rules and mechanics? And you'd want to find a property, something like Harry Potter, where you can create a lot of hard and fast rules. Or even if you're going to do something like Avatar, where you're going to impose the rules on the system and like be like, well, this is what happened in the show, so we're going to say this happens, and when you do this, it always does this. Versus something where you might want to take Avatar and then go, okay, well, I think you're going to describe what you want to happen, and then we're going to see how your dice roll, whether that works or not, and kind of adjust to how you want to run it.
I 100% agree. Yeah.
All right. You can switch to the next slide if you want.
All right, switching. Ooh, questions.
All right. So questions. I won't just read through these. You can read them on the screen. But kind of basically, you want to think about things. A lot of this panel ended up being just like general storytelling.
But a lot of people
on my slideshow.
Okay, you would be really surprised though, because when I was teaching storytelling in college, the number of times where I would say something and someone would actually ask a question about it that I thought would be really basic, like you should do an outline, or maybe you shouldn't do an outline if that stresses you out. People are like, I can write a story without doing an outline? I'm like, yeah, like you can just write it. Just like that's what revisions are for, dude. But like people get stressed out. So these questions are great. Let's look at them. So how does the team come together? Like why are they together? That's one of the things we talked about in the GM workshop is that like
exactly.
You should have players have some type of connection, or you should write a way for their paths to keep crossing. I think even if the characters have nothing in common, if their paths keep like doing this eventually, they'll just stick together out of convenience.
Yeah. Well, and I love doing one shots. So like it's like, okay, if you're doing one shot, it's a little easier. You just need one big thing to pull everyone together into the same room to get them started. And like, oh, what's the goal? They're all on. Like making sure there's a reason.
So how do they discover their objective? I mean, that can be tied in directly as well. Like, I mean,
exactly.
Like what is the inciting incident? Tosh, do you know, and we're going to talk about this in world building and storytelling a lot, but you know, I'm going to get slammed for this, Dan Harmon's Story Circle?
Yes.
Which is like the dumbed down, like heroic journey basically into 8 steps instead of 16, 22. I can't remember. There are so many different versions of it. But you have to get the event that starts everything in motion, basically.
Yeah, no, so much of my story writing is that kind of the hero's journey story beats kind of type stuff. So
all right, so what do you do, like to plan a narrative adventure inside of a game world that is inspired by, you know, any type of property, really? I glanced at the shelf and I saw my copy of Westworld. So I guess Christine's
yes.
copy.
Oh, I would love to do a Westworld game.
Wouldn't that be great? Like you could just use Deadlands and it'd be wonderful. But like, what would you? So either that, or if the chat wants to suggest like a property that doesn't have a game system. You know, they made a My Little Pony D&D. I'm not kidding. God. Like I almost bought it. Like when I was working with the Games Club, I was like, I'll put this in our library. Friendship is magic. 66 points of friendship damage.
Well, and that'd be such a great property to adapt because like it has kind of the kind of traits you want to look for. It has a group ensemble. It has different skills that the characters have. Some of them have magic. Some of them deliberately don't have any magic. Some of them have physical attributes. Some of them have like Fluttershy doesn't have anything mental, like physical. It's all friendship. Like it's a social attribute that she is her skill. Like, so it really leads your characters to develop different skill sets.
Oh, and that's actually really true because like making sure that you have that. I mean, so many cartoon properties, first of all, have things like the 4-man, the 5-man band.
Especially modern kids shows.
Yeah, basically everything from the 80s forward, you had that. Like, I think it started actually like 89 with the Ninja Turtles. And basically everything after the Ninja Turtles was a more group dynamic. You maybe have the leader character, but it wouldn't be like Optimus Prime necessarily, because you can't run a game with Optimus Prime. He's the hero. Don't try to tell me different.
That's a good point too. I don't know if I have this later in the slideshow, but whether you're going to let your characters run with characters that are actually in the original property versus having to create their own original characters, I usually recommend creating their own original characters because otherwise you're just tied into a whole bunch of stuff that's difficult to deal with. What are your thoughts on that, Kelly?
I think that's absolutely the case because of two things. One, if you're unless you're playing the type of game where you want to just like make the Justice League movie but good, which is fine. You can do that. I would highly recommend trying to do your own Snyder cut. But like going off of that, there's something really fun about playing a character inside of an established world. So say you're playing a Marvel superhero, right? And you are, for one, I would set it somewhere besides New York City because they've got enough. But then you have two questions you have to ask. One, what makes you unique? You get to bring in some of that. And also, why is Spider-Man not taking care of this? Why are the X-Men not here taking care of this? Why are the Avengers not helping out? And so long as you can answer that question easily, such as like, well, I mean, they haven't published the West Coast Avengers in like 20 years and we're up in like Vancouver. So, you know, somebody has to watch Vancouver and it's going to be us. And my name is, what's a name that hasn't been taken? Stinkbug Man. No, that's probably already been taken. You know, like my name is the blogger. I blog. That's my power, right? It could be really fun. And then once you spend some time establishing characters and things like that, you can have a really, if you do that, and you are not Superman, switching genres or companies. If you're not Superman, you need to establish yourself as your own hero, because then when Superman visits, you're not looking at a god, you're looking at a superior coworker. And that is a much, like, you can fanboy while not feeling like, well, shit. You know?
Yeah, then you get to cameo the real characters.
Right? And then the DM gets to play them, and that's always fun, right?
There you go. Right.
And that could be a lot of fun. Actually, if you want to watch a show that did that better than anyone else, watch season 2 of Supergirl, because Superman shows up in season 2.
Haha.
And he's not the main character. Superman is a supporting character in the first few episodes. And that is really difficult to do when you're like,
Weird
this is
to
a literal
watch.
Right? And it's actually fun because he's played by Taylor Hoechlin from Teen Wolf, the really dishy guy that got a better job and left. He's got his own show now. But anyway, sorry, Tosh.
So I would say the last kind of question on this sheet, which we kind of touched on with the My Little Pony stuff, was what kind of cool things about the characters in this type of property are your players going to want to explore? And what kind of story can you tell? Like, what kind of conflict can you do that will actually bring those out? So if you're working with something that like a magical property, what kind of magical conflict, what kind of situations can you put them in that will help those characters use it, and then balance it out? What kind of other situations can you use that will help your non-magical characters have something cool to do?
Well, and yeah, if there are non-magical characters, I think that's that can always be a really big problem in a game where you have like the normies. There was, I don't know, Tosh, did you ever play, there was a game of, I think it was Buffy the Vampire Slayer, actually.
I'd love to run a Buffy game.
So there's a system that they put out, I think it was Margaret Weiss's company put it out. I might be wrong. But it was good because not everybody had powers. And there are games like that and games like Monster of the Week where there are just normal people, but they get like extra luck to help them survive. So you get the Xander characters who are like, oh no, I fell down a 400-foot hole and somehow bounced all the way down or something like that.
Well, and Buffy's such a great example of that because like the non-magical characters in that show are most of them, and yet like even Buffy herself like technically has, extra strength, but for the most part, she's a regular person, and yet the show still manages to make all of them interesting and have like capture equal attention.
And I think one of the big things about that is making sure that all the characters are vulnerable on some level. Like even Superman's vulnerable. You just have to hit him emotionally, and not always with a rock made of kryptonite. Anyway, but yeah,
you can switch to the next slide if you want.
I will switch it to the next slide. Whoosh, whoosh. More questions. How do they change? What do they learn? What is the clear goal? What is the final boss? Who is the ultimate boss of the internet, Tosh?
So this is kind of when you're starting to develop when you're in the very beginning stages of developing your game, kind of like, what is the final villain? Is it going to be the big main villain from the actual show? Or are you creating a brand new villain? Like what kind of, how big is the conflict? Like, is this a world-ending conflict? Is this a little like mini, like, oh, someone's sad conflict? What level of story are you trying to tell here?
I think another thing that you need to be aware of when you're doing this as well is there's a phrase in the theater, which is there are no small roles, only small actors. I think is how it goes. Especially good if you're playing halfling bards.
You don't have to tell a world-ending story to make it have stakes.
Exactly. Like I would argue that some of the if Harry Potter stuck in my head right now because I've been trying to rip it off and make awful parodies of it for my game, but some of the earlier books have far more poignant things than the more like the Battle of Hogwarts was great, but Chamber of Secrets had higher stakes.
Well, and we just talked about Buffy. Like, what's the most emotionally wrenching episode of that show?
The body.
Everyone knows that.
It's the body.
That's one person, and that one hits everyone harder.
Did I tell you that I ran a version of that for a LARP?
Did you?
Yeah, in the first Mage LARP, we had a character who couldn't make it to a game, so their character got injured, and the entire cast spent 3 hours waiting for her to get out of surgery.
Oh wow, interesting.
And it was
so running games
so
that aren't just to beat them up. It's like what can we do that's a completely different type of story?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Well, what system should we have a better example than Harry Potter? Because I also don't want to. JK.
You need to promote that.
I'm fine making fun of it, right? I'm fine making fun of it.
But it's still just adding to more noise in the discourse about it, right?
Yeah.
It's so frustrating. I wish you would just get a goddamn grip. But I think we have a bunch of other ones we've been talking about too. So things what other so just as a background, kind of what games have you run or been in that were pop culture?
Okay, so Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Army of Darkness / Evil Dead. That was a role-playing game for a while. I actually got that for Dale for his birthday like 10 years ago. So just looking at my shelf right now, I have, let's see, technically Scion, which is a game where you play modern mythological heroes. It is basically a fanfic game. I've got Cyberpunk there, which was a role-playing game, then a video game, now a role-playing game again. I've got Rick and Morty in Big Rick Energy.
There's a Rick and Morty official game?
Okay, hold on. Oh, it's really wedged in there. One sec.
Because I feel like that one would be... Oh, I just feel like that one's such a hard, expansive thing to deal with.
So this is... Oh, sorry. This is Big Rick Energy, the Dungeons and Dragons one. There's a Stranger Things D&D now too.
See, that would make a lot of sense as a game. That'd be an easy one.
Oh yeah, because you're just playing that. But in this one, I've got my headphones in backwards. One sec. There we go. So there's Rick and Morty everything. I have promised to run this for Extra Life on the channel someday because it is all like in character. I just need people that can do the right voices because I can do Rick's voice and I can do Morty's voice, you have to play Jerry. And nobody wants to play Jerry. I've got a copy of The Witcher game by Artalasorian right here, and a bunch more. Like, I've done some adaptation. I worked on... I never finished it. I got really far into making a Naruto D20 back in, like, 2003, 2004, like, right when Naruto was a big thing, before it was Naruto's dad. Or Boruto's dad. Boruto? Anyway. So I don't know. And the Firefly one. I've seen the Firefly one. Although we're not going to talk about. I want to
run a Firefly game. I'm just writing down all the stuff that I'm like, oh yeah, I want to run that one day. Oh, yeah,
I mean, you could run a good show. I said, or you could run a good show.
We're done.
I'm sorry.
Goodbye. Panel's over.
No, the show was fine. The movie was better. You could tell, but yeah. Joss Whedon stuff translates really well. There was a Supernatural role-playing game that I used to sell when I worked at a game store. And that translates... Just play Hunter the Vigil. It's the same damn thing. I'm trying to think. So there's that one. I mean, there's role-playing games for everything, but as far as making it yourself, you got to figure out what kind of legwork you want to put in. I do a lot of parodies, so it's been really fun. Well, not parodies, but parodies or homages. It's really been fun to watch WandaVision because I keep having players be like, hey, I saw another episode of your game last night. I'm like, yep. Yeah. Oh, Star Wars! Star Wars!
Yeah, Star Wars is a good one. Who doesn't want to be a Jedi?
And then, the Star Trek game. Actually, your
yeah, I saw you guys do that.
So we ran a Star Trek game on the channel, and that is an interesting engine that I would only recommend for certain people.
Yeah, I've been so into DS9 right now, so I've been thinking about like doing a Star Trek game, and I'm like, I should watch more of yours to see how kind of your system works.
There is an unpublished final episode where I give up in the middle of game.
Oh my!
I'm trying to.
I feel like Star Trek is one of those ones that would be difficult to adapt. Like it's just, especially kind of what's the Next Generation era is just so, it can be so stifled. Character-wise and stuff, plot-wise, so I could feel it could be difficult.
Everybody wants to play Space Renegades. Like, they all want to play Mass Effect. By the way, there's a Mass Effect 5th Ed mod now that's free online that people have been wanting me to run for the channel for about a week. So, yeah, no, I 100% think you should check out Star Trek. It's the Modiphius engine, so you got to use weird dice for it that cost like $40. Or an app, which get the app, it's free. It's a really weird game though, because characters don't gain experience points. Their characters never gain things on their sheets. They just move points around.
Oh, interesting.
So there's never any sense of development.
It's just like a proportional distribution rather than an additive. Oh, that's an interesting mechanic.
So you kind of become more specialized throughout play, which is interesting, but like there are some problems that I had with that game. One of which was it was super high stress. So I was running it for Mike McGee, like your sibling. I was running it for Mike Eilot. And I was running it for Krista, who knows nothing about Star Trek. And I was running it for our good friend Way. And 3 out of 4 of those people are Star Trek fans in a way I will never reach. I was still working through the first season of DS9 at the beginning of this. I grew up with Next Generation. So this is something I really would suggest for adaptation. Be really careful if you are adapting a property that you care less about than your players, because you will get an ulcer. Because they will correct you on every little thing.
Like, well, no, that wouldn't happen.
Well, it's like that with YouTube.
No, actually...
Like, whenever I do a bad rules call in D&D, because I'm trying to get a game done by 11 and I don't want to check a rule that'll take me 5 minutes when we're on camera, I get, well, that's not the way spiritual weapon works. I'm like, I don't care, man. I just want to finish. I want to finish the game so I can have the big scene I was building up to. I don't care about this combat. But yeah, so
well, and all of this kind of ties into like I think the next slide, which is kind of what different systems.
Tips. Establish the norm. Game resources. Ooh, so you're going to talk about how much you love Fate for a while.
I'm going to talk about how much I love Fate because I like using other people's game systems as like resources, but not as my game system. So like if I'm looking at like the Sailor Moon book or a Star Wars book or et cetera, it's a Star Trek book, I'm going to use that like, oh, you have some really good ideas here for this, and this, but I'm not using your mechanics because my mechanics are going to be like way simplified than that. So like I know Fate is one that works really well because it's designed to be adaptable. It's literally designed to be adjusted to whatever you want, including like magic storylines, fighting storylines, social storylines, spy storylines, space storyline, whatever you need. You know, sci-fi, you can adapt it into that. And then there's a bunch of other systems that are like that. I don't know if you've played kind of some of like the one-page simplified RPGs, like Lasers and Feeling style ones. Some
of them are really, really fun. I've been getting a lot more into the Powered by the Apocalypse stuff. Actually, I have one thing to add on that. One sec. I'm going to pull something out that I don't think you've seen before. Where are you? Oh. It's missing. That's weird. Right? Huh. My copy of the book that I was looking for appears to be AWOL. But I was going to show you a like 30-page role-playing book that's from Powered by the Apocalypse that I have. That is, it's called The Ward. It is a medical drama role-playing game. So like General Hospital.
Oh, interesting.
So there's no combat.
I want to run a house game. I want to be house.
You can use it to run a house game. There's even a mechanic where if you sleep with a coworker, you can put them on the spot to change your social stats. Tasha, what are we? You paused for 2 seconds. That means that is the bad result. There's actually a mechanic. If it takes 2 seconds for you to respond, or longer, it is the oh. I love that stuff. I love it.
Oh my god, it's amazing.
I'll send you a link to it later. But all Powered by the Apocalypse stuff is really good because it's really fluid. It's very much like Fate, actually.
Okay. So basically on this kind of note, what I would suggest is basically first, if you're thinking of a property, look and see what's already been done. Because if it's a popular property, someone out there's probably already written a role-playing book on it. Whether that's like for sale somewhere or for free somewhere or for Kickstarter somewhere, or there's probably someone out there who's already done it and put in a shit ton of legwork on detailing a bunch of information that you're going to find really helpful, even if you don't like their version. Or if you like their version, hey, you're good to go. Just read their book.
Right. And a lot of these people, so I don't know if everybody knows about this, but there are a number of sites online where people like myself actually design role-playing games and post them where you can buy them for, $10. Like it's a PDF copy usually, but like, so Drive Through RPG is a website where it's got decades of back role-playing games. Half the time
you can find games for like donation too. So you can throw a couple dollars their way and yeah, get great games.
Yeah, and you get, I think that one of the best games I've ever played in my life, or at least like not it's not the best design game, but the most fun I've had in a game is this one called The Final Girl. Or The Final Girls. I can't remember. It's one of the two. It's on drive-thru RPG. It's a horror movie role-playing game.
That's so funny because that reminds me, I want to do a Cabin in the Woods game.
That's literally what you can do. So at the beginning of the game, you all have playing cards dealt to you. Ooh. And so you build characters and you create a narrative, and every scene, the game master seat switches to the left, and it keeps going until everyone except for one person is dead, like in a horror movie, and then that person gets to escape. But until then, every time someone dies, the scene changes, and the only way to stay alive is you play war with the cards you have. So you've got a hand and you're like, okay, so we're running through the woods, and okay, oh, the slasher's coming up behind you, Jen and Christine, they're right behind you, and like, boom, I have an ace. Oh, I only have a 2. Well, sorry, Christine, you're dead. And it's a really good game. It's no dice. It's only playing cards. And you can actually brainstorm a script for a horror movie in like 20 minutes, and then you can make money. It's nice.
Well, that brings us back to mechanics too. Like you can do a D&D style with like D20s and all these separate dice. You can do something Fate style where you're rolling. It's basically rock, paper, scissors, but like with dice. And then things like rock, paper, scissors in a LARP. Things like different weird styles like cards and stuff. I think what was the Western one used cards or something for something too.
Oh, you're talking about Deadlands. Yeah. So Deadlands, we had poker chips.
Yeah. So like just adding weird mechanics or finding weird mechanics that might work for your story and add immersion.
So like what would be good for that? So like
add fluidity and ease.
You could do, like, if you did something like My Little Pony or some of like the sweetsier, like girlier shows from childhood, go buy a big bag of gummies and put them in the center of the table, and every time you eat a gummy you get a bonus, but when you run out of gummy something bad happens. Right? Like just
cute stuff that actually adds to the flavor of your player's experience.
Sometimes literally.
Right.
Oh, I didn't get it around the food panel. Damn it. Food and role-playing games is one of my favorite things if you do it right. You'll gain weight, but it's good. You can do some creepy shit with that. I'll tell you about the butchery fiasco one time later. So yeah. Okay,
so you can go back to tips one slide if you want.
Actually, if you don't mind, 5-room dungeon is something that I know a lot of people haven't heard of. Do you want to explain that to them? Because it's a great technique if you're a starting DM.
So this is really, okay, hold on. I don't know my note in front of me. This is really, I don't even know if this is appropriate for this slide, but it's kind of a storytelling technique to, if you want to write a game, write a kind of very useful for one-shots. There we go. Basically, you've got it basically gives you 5 different scenes to make a really adventure that's going to work and be dynamic and interesting. So number 1, I've got entrance with a guardian. So some sort of like roadblock. Mm-hmm. 2, a puzzle or a role-playing challenge, something that's not just a fight. 3, a trick or a setback, so something that surprises your characters that they're not expecting. 4, big climax, big fight. Yeah. And I've got 5, reward, kind of a revelation or, whatever is the final result that you're looking for.
And that's useful basically you can go through this formula, and the thing is, because they're time-tested like myth formula, you won't get bored, and when you do, you can just shuffle the steps.
Exactly, or like just add a couple more. Like, where are my actual stupid notes?
I don't know.
There we go.
I'm putting a quick note on the screen though, because I forgot to name this panel, and I actually have room this time.
So while he's doing that, I will show kind of how I write my games. Is I usually write like a little sheet of paper, and I just start writing out notes. So I'll like write a page for each thing, and this is going to come up later in the panel. Things like the setting, the villains, the characters, the choices, the locations, all this kind of stuff. And like one of them is going to be the plot. And so like I'll write out a list of like the different things I want to happen, and then fill in all the details. Like I want 3 fights. I want 1 boss fight at the end. And then you can fill in all the little details. And that way you can kind of keep track of how you're writing your notes in a system. I don't know how you do it, Kelly.
Oh, God. So it depends on the game. So my notebook. So for example, this is the one for Reign of Emeries. Okay. So for this guy, I have a basic cast list. I have a supporting cast list. I have tags over on this side, who they're connected to. And then I've got a bunch of like random generating charts in case I need, since I need like names. But my game notes, and I'm sorry for this. This is game one's notes right here. The music I use, hurt them more, cindered,
Great reminders.
cracked head on the ground, like, and then like little notes like this, like what is this? Tendrils under mouth, Jeremy Irons. Remember you're playing Jeremy Irons. Milos
I remember who you base your NPCs on.
Spreadsheets are really good for that. So even if you don't tell the players who you're playing, if you're
Exactly. It'll help you create such a better character than it's like, oh, it's just a random guy. Oh, he does random guy stuff.
He does random guy stuff. He's and then like exaggerate traits can be kind of fun too. So like in Shards of Nirn, we've got Huey Parker and the Goblin of Fire, I think was the last episode. But like I've got all of these NPCs that are complete ripoffs of Harry Potter characters, and they're freaking hilarious.
Oh my god. And it adds to like the especially if you're doing something with an audience, like all the people who catch it are going to be like, "Oh my god." So it gives them an extra bonus fun aspect.
And that's true. Amy was just posting in chat that this has a lot to do with knowing the property and what kind of narrative beats you want to hit, and also what narrative beats kind of fit. Remember, it's like playing music, right? You want to make sure you have the right rhythm and right instruments, because you don't want to go necessarily play jazz with like, I don't know, a double-necked electric guitar. You probably could, but it's going to take a little more work than doing it with like, you know, a saxophone.
Right?
You know?
Yeah, and kind of working what makes sense for the type of property. Like, are you doing My Little Pony? Well, maybe something where people die is not going to be the right feel.
Yeah, and clear it by your players first, because, right?
Especially if they're signing up for My Little Pony game and you're like, actually, this is a dark My Little Pony game.
I think that was, yeah, I'm not going to get into my problems.
Whereas if you said this is a dark My Little Pony game, the people who want that would be like, fuck yeah.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's kill Fluttershy. Applejack's just destroying everybody. So what page should we be on?
Okay, so I think
we're on tips right now.
I think that's all kind of stuff we've just general
game resources.
ideas.
Whatever system.
So this is kind of my tips for stuff like that. We were talking about like how you're doing your roles, how you're doing your stuff. If you really like strict mechanics and heavy kind of rule-based systems, this is not like the slide for you. My tips are generally not going to be of use for you anyways. If you're like me and you want to run a really loose, really free-form, really game that's about letting the characters do stuff and have a story and play their characters, be flexible with your stuff, especially in a first game or a one-shot where you're balancing stuff out, especially if you made the villains, if you made all the enemies and stuff and like they haven't been play tested, don't give them something that's going to murder them and you don't have any way to scale that back.
Yeah, I think we touched on that a little bit in the first panel of the day, where we were like, yeah, there's worse things than death. Don't just always kill your players. Like, you know, sell them into slavery, send them to a prison, like, you know, I'm not saying this in general, like, try not to do these things in real life, but, like, you know, it's more fun to do a prison break than it is to roll a new character.
Well, and also, like, yeah, find ways that make it hurt without, like, just being, oh, you're hurt.
You know, take out sidekicks. Hurt NPCs. I have an absolute, like, trap card in one of my games.
Destroy places that they care about.
And yeah, you can hurt them real good. You can hurt them real good. I think that's why people remember the Battle of Hogwarts so well, is because it was like, I mean, it was kind of the climax of the series, but it was also supposed to be like destroying your childhood. Blah blah blah. I don't think they went quite far enough with it, to be honest. But Prison Break. So yeah, let's. Where do you want to be? You want to be on whatever?
So I'll just show you on this one point. I'll kind of show how I've done kind of like building for my villains.
Holy
so
crap!
Like
really?
On the
Okay.
well, yeah, but like, I'll just show you how simple it is. Like I literally just put a bunch of boxes next to everyone, and then as I was going, I'm like, well, I know how long I want this fight to last, and so as it was going, it's like, okay, well, no, the first fight was actually pretty balanced. The second fight was pretty balanced. The third fight, I crossed out a whole row of boxes because they were taking too long, and I'm like, well, no, okay, he's dead now. Like,
Was that from the Sailor Moon game?
That was the Sailor Moon game.
What was the green guy? Was that the doctor?
No, the green guy was Biru-chan, and the doctor was Science.
Oh yeah. What was Biru-chan?
That was the drunk businessman, the drunken Japanese businessman.
Oh, okay, yeah. I don't really that fight didn't seem like it was taking.
Because I closed it off when I wanted it to.
Yeah, the doctor one. Yeah, so like. And also you were really flexible in that game because a lot of times players are going to try something that is in the theme of the game that is not in the rules that you did. I tried to seduce one of the villains with my goodness, and you allowed it to happen because I was playing like a super hunky like high school jock guy who was just too darn good for his own good, and you rolled with it because it was shoujo anime, right? It was like
exactly like that literally happens in Sailor Moon. Naru and Nephrite fall in love, right? You know,
it's really true.
Finding the weird stuff from your canon that's appropriate.
Okay, so where do you want to be? So let's
I
go.
can shift to the next one. Planning. So this is just a summary slide that's going to go over all the next slides.
Setting, characters, villains, locations, keys, goals, infos, and plot points. Setting.
Okay, so this is really diving into your first page of notes, which should be setting. What are all the important parts of the world? Are you setting it in a small setting, a town? Are you setting it in a global setting, a universal setting? What specific location from this canon that you're adapting are you leaning into?
Well, let's get a property from the chat and then let's start riffing with that. So we have a singular example. So chat, post something real quick and we'll start riffing with that so long as we know what it is. But we watch TV a lot, I'm pretty sure. So it's so yeah, post something.
Movies, books.
TV. Nothing that'll spoil anybody. So like, I don't think WandaVision.
Not WandaVision, for instance.
Captain Planet. Okay, do you remember enough about Captain Planet, Natasha?
I don't remember enough about Captain Planet. Okay. I know of Captain Planet, but...
Okay. Well, he's a hero. He's going to take pollution down to 0, is what you need to know, but that's fair. I just wanted to wrap. Mass Effect, did you play Mass Effect?
I did not.
Oh, goddamn.
Video games are an iffy
Doctor Who.
Because... Yes, I do know Doctor Who.
Okay, I actually have the Doctor Who role-playing game. It's actually really, really good by Cubicle 9, because... So, Transformers... Beetleborgs. Actually, I don't know Beetleborgs, but I know
Doctor Who would actually be really good for a setting example because there's so many options in Doctor Who. It literally switches between conflicts that are like one-person conflicts on a specific planet and time versus entire like timeline conflicts.
Let's do Doctor Who because I've got a bunch of things I can talk about Doctor Who as well. Okay, so let's go through this list. So what's the setting? So what world are you adapting? I feel like with Doctor Who, this is the secondary question, though. I think the first one is, who are you playing? Like, who are the characters in Doctor Who?
Yeah, are you playing someone Doctor Who is helping? Are you playing people that Doctor Who maybe comes in for a cameo at the end, but they're dealing with their own issue? Like, are they dealing with one of the villains from the Doctor Who series?
Okay, well, let's make a choice here. So, are the people, like, a member of UNIT? Is that what it's called? The organization.
We need Amy here.
We need Amy here. So maybe that, or they are like a one-shot group. So say like the Weeping Angel episodes.
Exactly, like some sort of team who's working on something.
Okay, so we'll say that you're just playing college kids in this one. In the Doctor Who universe, something is coming, or you're playing people. The Doctor is NPCing and will be in the background, but or they are not a player character. Which the few times I've ran that game, I always play the Doctor, and then the Doctor goes off and does something doctorish while...
Yeah, like, oops, sorry, gotta go. I'll be back later. You guys got this.
So we could do that, or we could talk about like UNIT or Torchwood. So like the organization.
Torchwood's good too.
Okay, we'll say Torchwood. So it's set in the Doctor Who universe, but you're playing the Torchwood agents. Those of you who don't know Torchwood.
And that narrows it down too, because now you're playing people from a specific time and place.
Yeah, so that's Cardiff in the early 2000s.
Who
Right?
have a specific set of abilities. They're not interdimensional, interplanetary travelers. They are people who live on Earth.
Okay, so they're a bunch of people who are endowed by the British government, or is it the world government? I forget. But somebody to go and solve supernatural crimes. So
I mean, if you're British, it's probably considered the same thing.
So Tosh, I don't want to play a character with an English accent. Do we have to set this in Cardiff, or I guess a Welsh accent? Like,
Well, and even still, you could say I'm setting it in Cardiff, but you could be from America or from wherever.
I mean,
But now explain how you got to Cardiff. Why are you here? Why are you hired by the British government?
well, I don't actually know that much about. Can we play it somewhere else? Like, then you talk about setting. Like, where do you want to set it? Do you want to set it on the moon? Are you on a moon base for some reason that Torchwood
Where
funds?
it makes sense.
I don't know. Whatever works according to the setting. Okay, so who are the players going to be? I want to be Dirk McDreamy, American secret agent, doubling as a shoe shiner. Good day, Governor. Here to shine your shoes. It's an impeccable accent. They'll never see through it.
I'll never guess.
Okay, so original characters are ones from the show. You can, especially if it's something that's like Torchwood, you can play most of those people. Jack Harkness is a little broken, but
Exactly. Yeah.
But everybody else, like, you shoot them, they die.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
guess technically he does too
regular.
for a minute, doesn't he? Anyway. So where are you going to focus your story? Is this a small issue or world? I mean, like, Torchwood's honestly perfect for this.
Yeah.
It really is. The Queensman instead of the Kingsman. That is right. Pat 66. That's really dark.
Oh yeah, because I mean, like for me, I'd like to run like an ocean, like a heist type Ocean's 11 kind of.
That would be
those
really
kind
good.
of movies.
What would it just be like? I guess you could change it to like Ocean's 5. You only have 5 PCs, but
Yeah, exactly. Then you have the opportunities to.
all right. So once we get through setting, characters. Ooh. Progression of skills for your character. Are your players experienced or going to be new at this or experienced?
This kind of ties into like, especially in a lot of shows that run for a long time, the characters from the beginning of the show versus the characters from 7 seasons in have completely different skill sets.
Supernatural, they calculated it out, and the brothers have died like 800 or 900 times at least in that show. There's no stakes by the end of it. And
Yeah,
then
it's like, what's going to happen next? We're going to die again.
I can
World's gonna
spoil
end again.
this. And the whole thing goes out awful. I actually showed Christine the final episode. I'm not going to spoil it, but I showed her the final episode because I heard what it was, and she was like, "That's it." And I said, "That's what you waited 15 seasons to not watch, Christine, or what you didn't wait 15 seasons to watch."
See, I never watched that show regularly. I just know that it ended destially, which was exciting.
No, it didn't.
No, I heard it did.
No, they started and then they trapped their gays in turbo hell. It's a long story. There's a great video by Sarah Zed on YouTube about it, and Sarah Zed looks just like Amy.
Well, that show was always so baity, so I'm not surprised.
It was super baity. So only the first 5 seasons are any good at all, and then after that, it's like individual episodes are good. So they're kind of like OAV anime episodes. Like, anyway.
But this is so important to establish with your players before you get started, because if they're building a character that's from one of the later season type abilities and another player is building a character from first season, like, you got to get them on the same page or your team's not going to work at all.
Yeah, that is 100% true. All right. Villains. Who's the opposing force?
What are they fighting?
Dean's implied bisexuality. That's what they're fighting. Dean, it's the villain. Dean's subsumed bisexual urges are the villain. So yeah, I mean, I think another thing that's interesting about this is a little bit apropos, but if you guys are running a TV show game, have weird episodes.
If you're running a long game, make sure you have like those are some of the ones people remember the best.
Like, I've ran 2 live-action role-playing games that were musical episodes.
Which I haven't been in any of.
You haven't, because you left right before it. The one that you would have been in would have been the rock opera, and it was pretty good. It wasn't as good as the first one, which was just the Show Tunes musical. The rock opera was pretty solid, though. Yeah, have strange episodes. Have episodes where, like, they go to the beach and have their swimsuit episode if you're doing an anime. Like, have fun. Like, same with villains. Like, don't. I don't know.
And things like weird plots, like in TV, like some interesting episodes are things like where it's a one room story, like they are in the same location the whole time.
Yeah,
like just
bottle.
interesting storytelling techniques that just give you a framework to do something.
It's true.
Limitations give you the best inspiration sometimes.
Also, don't forget that everybody that you are an asshole to someone else. So if you want to have a real subversion, have the villain be a hero from the main story. Like, maybe Harry Potter turns into a real dick after he becomes an Auror. Maybe he
also kind of on this note is the opposite. Like, I really, really, this is difficult to say because what if you say it out loud, it doesn't work. But to run a game where you trick your characters, like, are they actually being the bad guys? Like, do they not find this out until halfway through? Do they have to figure it out?
Are
like,
we the
play
baddies?
With your characters.
I mean, it's
like,
true.
You know?
I think that those type of games, if you run them really well, are very impactful, but you have to be really subtle. But yeah, of course. Oh, good job, Stu. But things like that, like, you can really have fun. And then also, the other version of that, make your villains maybe allies, and don't have it be a subversion of like, don't have this be like are we the baddies? But like, if we're doing Doctor Who and one of the alien races that's like jerks turns out to need your help or hire you for some reason, like, remember that most creatures can be sympathetic. And like, if Harry Potter becomes an Auror, and go back to Harry Potter because it's an easy one, and becomes a real jerk, particularly, and starts victimizing anyone who had even a tangential connection to the Death Eaters, like family and friends, you might get hired by Draco Malfoy to go rescue his cousin from something who had nothing to do with anything and is like a half-blood themselves, you know, but it is in jail for association or something like that. That's an interesting story. You have an unjust criminal justice system mixing with an asshole making you do something good, because almost nobody's pure evil.
Well, and that leads me into one of my biggest pet peeves, which is villains who are just evil for the sake of being evil. Like, no one's evil. No one thinks of themselves as the bad guy. And if you don't understand that, your villain's going to suck balls. Like,
unless they are that's not true. There are some people who think of themselves as the bad guy, but you got to commit to that bit. You basically,
well, and also, like, you can play that off into a world where that makes sense, but in reality, like, this has to be in part of that world.
It's true. Yeah. This has to be something like Captain Planet, where you're like, pollution is good. Corporate gains. You know, like, you have to be like, that has to be something that you're doing. Like,
yeah, like, even if your villain's like, oh, I'm so greedy and I just want all the power and all the stuff, like, why? Like, they need more than that in order to, you know?
Unless you're literally playing a cartoon.
Yeah.
Like, and that's okay. If you're literally playing a cartoon, that's fine. But don't try to elevate something.
Your players and your audience will be more invested if you can actually give a reason why this is happening.
Yeah, well, and James, you in the chat just mentioned the Nefandi. The Nefandi know that they're right. They're not the villains. They are the. I mean, they're right, and the universe sucks and deserves to be nullified. And they're right. I actually kind of like them. But yeah, Blurk.
Yeah, as long as there's some sort of reason.
Yeah. Okay. Villains. Going to the next slide. Locations. What scenes are you going to set it in? Where's it going to happen?
So this is basically like, this starts to be planning out your plot here. Like, how many scenes are you having? Compared to a campaign, how long is your campaign running? How long is this? A one shot? Is this a 5-game series? Is this an ongoing with no determined end? Like, what kind of story are you telling here? Is this an expansive? Do you need individual plots each week, or do you need kind of a really long story arc that you already have in mind and you've just got to slot in each episode into this long going plot?
Yeah, like your friends visiting from, for the weekend, and you're getting together and playing some games, and you all want to play a Torchwood game. Like, that's different than, say, like an actual ongoing campaign. Last time we went to Fan Expo, we got bored, stole one of the hotel convention rooms, like upstairs in our hotel. They had a bunch of like conference areas, and we just stole one, and I ran Doctor Who. Like I brought the game. I might have just used my phone for some of it, but like. Yeah. So,
also, on that note, as a complete side note, like, don't be afraid to run shit if you're not feeling prepared and you don't have like all the proper materials and books and dice and stuff. Like, you can run a game with nothing. Like, just, you know, like, get some rock, paper, scissors going and like write down notes on a piece of paper. Like, you don't need to spend days and hours planning out a one shot if you're just going to run it for fun.
And so here's something you might not know. They didn't always used to make polyhedral dice. Do you know what they used, chat, before then? Strips of paper in a hat, or a cup, or a bucket.
Deck of cards.
Deck of cards, right? Paper, rock, scissors. You can use literally anything. There's one game that I saw on drive-thrurpg. I forget what it's called, but you have to beat the DM or game master in push-ups, squats, or sit-ups to win a challenge. And I forget what it's called, but it's something like I think it's like Giants and Gains or something like that. And it's all about like out exercising. You can do anything. You can do anything. Like, you know, it's
someone in the chat here mentioned their favorite twist is when the villain becomes the good guy. Twists like that, like where at the end of it, your characters realize they've actually been working for the villains all along, and like, oh shit, we should be helping the guy who we thought we were trying to defeat. Like, finding interesting ways to subvert what the players think is going on.
I mean, remix it. It's fan culture. You're writing and acting a fanfic. So like, you know, as long as you keep the mood, if it feels right. And the thing is, like, if you're immersed enough in a fan property, you'll know when it feels right. Also, if it has music and you're not broadcasting on the internet, acquire music either through YouTube or through other legitimate means and play it in the background. Because I guarantee if you're running the Star Wars RPG, you want John Williams in the background, which is why I can't run the Star Wars RPG on Twitch. I did it for a little while, and I had some music that was like sound-alike, but non-copyright. Yeah, like it was like, instead of the Imperial theme, it was like bump, bump, bum, 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 bum. Ba-bum. And it was pretty close. Different enough. It was just different enough. It was called the Dark Forces March by Sasha Ende.
Oh, that's amazing.
And it was close enough that people got the idea. But I promise you, if you are playing a game and combat picks up and you're like in the background, you get super hyped. Like when we played that, we used to have like lightsaber apps on our phone. It would be like just to make, or like the R2D2 apps, so that like you could have a conversation with your phone in character and be like, What is that B3? Oh yeah, that's wrong. What?
Oh, this is such a so side conversation we should go into, which is things like immersion effects, like kind of what kind of sound, what music, what all this stuff can you add to actually make it more cool?
Everything. Also mood lighting, but like dimmer switches are great, candles are better, electric candles are best. You will have that player who plays with candle wax and gets your table all gunky if it's a real candle. I guarantee you. I just like, there's always gonna be someone who spends the entire time going to the candle flame. Idiot. Ow, it's hot. No wonder. It's literally combusting. Anyway, sorry.
For locations, I guess some of the stuff on here, things like, are there alternate ways of getting through the story? Like, are you setting up a kind of a web where they can go in any different direction to get there? Are you setting up a train track where your characters progress through each step to get to the end one? Are you setting up like optional different ways where they can go any route but still get there? Like, how are you... And how much work do you want to put in? Because if you're doing like one select route, that can be easier for the DM because you know exactly what's going to happen. Whereas if you have to develop a whole bunch of stuff, keep in mind some of that stuff may never get used.
Oh, thanks, Dave. Dave got hyped by my 2-second Star Wars song, and I'm gonna get a copyright strike from Disney for that.
Oh
by
God!
The way. Oh God! Okay, so goals. What are your goals? I guess that's part of what you were talking about. Learn, grow, change, research, investigate, items, locations.
So basically, what did your characters actually want to achieve, and what do they kind of externally want and internally want? Like, what is their actual plot goal? Like, what's the driving story plot, and then what do the characters actually care about too? And then how are you distributing that information so that it moves the story along, like so that it moves them from scene to scene? What do they have to find and learn?
I would say that another thing about this is that with items and locations and things like that, it should be like a greatest hits compilation if you're doing a short run. Like, give them the beats that they want. If you're doing something like Torchwood, have them at the Torchwood facility. Have a Doctor Who cameo. I would actually suggest having a Doctor Who cameo that you never say you're actually the Doctor. You just have it kind of in the background, or maybe have like a random person walking around interacting with them. And then suddenly you have the vorp, vorp, vorp. And you're like, wait, right?
Hey, oh!
You know, so play with them. And don't make it so... I guess, I don't know, do people still buy greatest hit albums? Because greatest hit albums always had like 3 stinkers on them for some reason. And it was just so that you didn't play all the high notes in a row. You don't just have like, Despacito on repeat. I don't know.
Right, so you don't get bored. But I mean, this can be like having like, these are basically plot points that aren't just plot points. So having something that moves the story along in a sense of like, what cool stuff, like in my Sailor Moon game, it was things like, well, every season they got new weapons and new powers and stuff. Like, what kind of cool stuff can you do to get to the next step? That's not just having someone say, oh, we need to go here now. Like, what kind of thing can they discover that's like, oh, this is neat. We learned this, so we should go investigate this other location or talk to this person because we found this thing and they would know about it. Finding things that your players have to actually mystery through in order to get to the next stage instead of just feeding it to them, I guess.
You definitely want to avoid, and this is not a judgment of the entire movie, but you want to avoid Rogue One syndrome, where you have to go here. Every 30 seconds, you're going to a new planet, and you're like, we have to go here, and then we have to go here, then we have to go here, then we have to go here, then we have to go here. Can't you just combine some of these elements? Because if you look at, like, the original Star Wars movies, they don't go many places. Like, Empire is the best of the 3. Man, the first one has its own charm that I really love. But they go, like, it goes Hoth, Asteroid, Cloud City. That's the entire main cast except for Luke and R2. Going through those 3 steps, and then it's literally Hoth, Dagobah, Cloud City for Luke. 3 locations to get the entire damn plot that involved Jedi training and going to save your friends and confronting your turns out to be daddy, sorry for the spoiler, for the first time. Like, you don't need that many additional steps. Condense it.
Right.
Keep it simple, stupid. It's the KISS principle. KISS. Keep it simple, stupid.
Don't just add complexity for the sake of complexity. Kind of on that note, I think the last thing on this page is the most important. Like, if your players can defeat the end boss at the beginning of the game or the campaign, like, your end boss, they need to actually change in order to actually win at the end. Otherwise, what is the point of the whole game? If they could have just walked into the end boss room at the beginning of the game and won, what story are you even telling?
And you should also make sure that each member of the party, particularly if you're adapting cartoons or anime, everybody should have a special thing about them that contributes to this. Like,
exactly, giving each character their own individual, like, what did they grow and learn, and what new power or skill did they build? That's helping.
Even if it's just like you separate the characters and then each one of them has their own mini boss that they have to fight that overcomes a mirror representation of themselves, or the equivalent, like, oh, you're a really tricky fighter and so am I, and I'm a brute type of thing, and I have to learn to be more than just a brute.
And then the next person is like, oh, well, you're the sneaky one, so like your task to defeat is completely different.
Yeah, exactly. Like, a lot of anime do that really well. Like, the Kenshin did that really well. Ranma One Half did that numerous times. And I'm pretty sure Naruto does it out the ass too. Like, any real shonen show really does that, where you have to adapt and grow. And I know shoujo does it too, but usually more on an emotional level as well. Which is always good, actually. Don't ever... Shoujo's great.
And this, exactly like you're saying, like, this doesn't have to be like, oh, well, they learned a new skill. It can be like, oh, well, they learned something new about themselves or about their relationship to someone or about how they function. And that's what's actually helping them defeat the boss.
So key info. What's the theme of your game? What's the story about? So yeah, what up?
So this is basically like what the kind of the overarching reason you're telling a story in this world in the first place. Like what is your story? What is the point of your story? Like, what are these? Try to find, if you can find one thing to tie everything together to, it's going to be a much more cohesive story that people actually remember, rather than being like, oh yeah, there was some stuff about this and then they were doing this, but you know, it's like, whereas like, oh no, it was about them all learning to kind of in their own ways why their friendships were important, or why they had to work together, or why or why they had to like reunite with their family, or it's something that actually, or find their own found family, things that actually matter. Yeah,
exactly. All right, so that's key info. Should I continue?
Let me see if there's anything else in this page.
So we got about 10-15 more minutes left.
Okay, so I think we are getting through this. So on this one, I would say basically this is like about what all the stuff you need to think of as a GM to keep in the game. So locations we already talked about. Interaction is like, what NPCs do you need to create? What puzzles and objects and traps and items do you need to have established? So like for me, I'll write out literally a list of items that the characters are going to have to interact with, and obviously for each location or scene, what NPCs are going to be there. You usually only need one, and kind of like, who are they, what's their name, because the players are going to goddamn ask you their name every time you're like
Yep, and that will be the new party pet that will tag along for the rest of the game. So you better.
Yeah, and then they'll be like, "We love this person the best," and you're like, "His name is
Beepo." It's Beepo. It's Beepo is what's gonna happen. I named Beepo as a joke, and everybody like someone wants me to make a Beepo T-shirt because there's my Neville Longbottom is this little dude named Beepo who picks his nose and throws rotten sandwiches at people, and people are like, "That's our guy. That's the chosen one.
Bring him back."
It's because he got a nap, or he got Anyway, it's a long story, but Beepo is love. Beepo is life.
Yeah, name your NPCs and write down those names, even if you create them on the spot, because the players are going to want to remember who the heck that was 3 games later, and you're going to be like, why do you even remember this character?
1 out of 10 players will write them down too. Don't trust them to. Usually it's Amy in my games who does. But even then, sometimes they get sidetracked and they don't. And then
or they write it down wrong.
Oh,
and then you have 2 characters who are like, it's this. No, it was this. No, that was the character from the...
Oh, boy. All right.
You can go to the next one if you want.
I will. Plot points.
So this is like your kind of your overarching story structure, and then we can probably actually just dive right into the story structure next.
Oh, okay. Story structure.
Okay, so this one, so we've got kind of basically your, like I was saying before, like kind of your story beats, like a simplified structure, kind of a 6-point structure. This would be like a 6-scene kind of RPG. So for me, I would start with like an opening, like get your characters to either in the same place or not, but like just start describing themselves and what they're doing and what their normal is before things happen. Next scene, obviously something happens. Like what is this game about? What do they have to deal with? I've written fight down for all of these, but it doesn't have to be a fight. Like I said before,
encounter maybe might be a better word for that. Like an event, something happens.
Yeah.
So honestly, what you should do when you look at this is divide it into, so like each 2 of these is one part of a whole, right?
Yeah, like so you could do a 3-act structure here or a 2-act structure, just dividing them up.
Exactly, right? Like opening. So the opening begins with the opening, and it ends with the change of situation as we move into the first event.
Yeah, the characters have to commit that they're doing something now.
Yeah, so something has changed in their lives.
They're involved.
Then the next one, we're adapting to the new world, we're learning about it, and then we think that we're in control of it, but it turns out we're not.
This is where you surprise your characters. Give them a twist, give them something weird, give them like something that's beyond what they thought they could handle this, and now they can't. They're realizing, oh, we almost died.
If you ever watch any anime, that's basically when the hero loses the first time. Because they always have to lose once to make it count.
Or they lose someone close to them, or
it's always
something
Krillin.
Like that.
And Yamcha, but like, who cares about Yamcha?
Someone gets hurt, someone gets captured, someone gets, something happens. A planet gets blown up.
And then at the end of the false victory, or the moment of like gut twist, from there it's all about going back to conclude and finish the arc and then resolve it afterward.
Yeah, and like give your characters a chance to sit with kind of like the stakes before you do the final battle. Like get them to actually like make a plan and sit down and talk and like actually realize what situation they're in, like what has happened, what did the characters all think about it. Give them a chance to actually explore how their characters feel about this, what's going on, rather than just being like, okay, now you're fighting the final boss, let's go.
Mm-hmm. And I think at the end of it, the most important thing to do when you're telling a story is that at the end of the game, the characters, if they're not NPCs, and even NPCs this applies to, but it doesn't have to all the time, no character should be exactly the same after an arc. So for example, say this is Torchwood, there's an encounter, something weird happens in Torchwood that involves a time paradox, we'll say. The time paradox goes out of control in the second act, so the middle portion, and just when we think it's under control, the team arrogantly does something wrong that blows up their base or kills a prominent NPC. Or
making your characters fuck up accidentally, like, oh, in the middle battle, oh, they tried to do something, oh wow, that made it worse. That's an excellent way to kind of,
like, Doctor Who's especially good for that, because it always gets worse before it gets better.
When especially if you give them like, oh, here's this brand new weapon you have, this can defeat the evil villain, and then they try to use it in the middle of the game and it makes things worse because they're not using it right, or they don't know how to use that power, or they thought they understood something about the villain, but they understood the emotions wrong in a non-fight context, and they're making it worse.
And then in the final episode, say like that you get the facility back, or you get the time anomaly under control, but that character is still gone, or maybe you get them back and instead they are an old man or a baby, and now you have to raise them, and congrats, now you're a parent to your boss.
Giving consequences to the things that happen.
Right? And that's really important, because then characters grow and change, having learned something, because it's a metaphor for life, guys. It's a metaphor for life, hopefully. Hey, it's Art Hard. Hey, Art Hard Studios. Good to see you there. Art Hard's going to be tomorrow with us at the community panel. Also, happy birthday, dude. I don't know if you heard me say it the other night. Yay! Art Hard runs Weed and D. They're a really cool dude. Okay, so story structure. Writing a story.
Bam.
Bam.
So this is just kind of like, I think we were talking about before,
we just did this.
Yeah, like just resources, look into like, resources for storytelling, things like script writing, novels, just story type help will help you write a better RPG.
It's true. Tips. Even action games, fights don't always have to be fights. Yeah, this is what we're talking about. Mix it up with puzzles.
Yeah.
So honestly, like, a seduction can be a fight. Like,
exactly.
It easily can.
Like we said, event, encounter doesn't have to be a fight.
Like Ocean's 11, you were talking about doing an Ocean's 11 game. Like, a seduction in Ocean's 11 is a fight.
Also, a seduction doesn't have to be romantic. Like, you can have some sort of like a convincing, or a befriending, and like I wrote in this list, things like a bet or a contest. Like, does your character have to win a strength contest or a dance contest or
rap battle?
Something weird? Exactly, like something bizarre, in order to actually impress someone or move on to something. And
just remember that any type of confrontation or conflict should be written with or role played. Well, let me finish before. Should be handled in basically the same way. So, for example, if you are going into something that is okay. Sex scenes and fight scenes are the same thing. Same with musical numbers. They all serve a purpose to advance the story. If you're writing a book and there's a sex scene there just for the sex, you're writing a sex book. You're not writing a story. You're writing sex. Sex and a gunfight should have the same beats to them. The gunfight begins, it escalates, and it finishes. Same idea, guys. Sorry, this is the stuff I teach my students. Like, it's going the same direction. Any type of confrontation does, including musical numbers if you're into that.
And another note on this, like puzzle and a trap, this can be a social puzzle or a social trap. Like, do they have to find the right person to talk to and get the right information out of it? Is there something they say to one person that's going to blow up this whole room? Like everyone's going to hate them if they say the wrong thing to the wrong person, things like that.
How am I going to make Janie Sims the prom queen? You look at her. She's wearing glasses and a ponytail and paint on her overalls. No one's going to make her prom queen. Sorry, I've been watching a lot of stuff recently. Planned character creation. I think we talked about that already at the beginning.
Yeah. So I mean, my biggest tips, I'll just breeze through these. As the different ways you can do it are either doing it, if you're doing a one shot, doing it on the same day as the one shot, which can be good if you're gonna just streamline things. I always recommend doing your character creation with all your players, or at least most of your players, in the same conversation, because that way they can actually build off of each other. If you can't, sometimes you can't, but I like doing it that way. And make sure you give your characters enough information ahead of time, especially if they're not doing it together, so that, like I said before, they know what type of character abilities they should have.
Sounds good. All right, so let's
I think we already talked about balancing the villains and stuff.
We did, and then we're at maps and pictures.
So this is like we were talking about, like with music and stuff. If you can add pictures of your locations, of your villains, of the items you're giving these people, and music, sounds, effects, it's just everything is going to really help your characters' immersions.
It's true.
One of the things I've done, especially, you can Google things like floor plans and stuff for different types of buildings. Like, I found floor plans for a nuclear power plant once, and I didn't want to fucking design a nuclear power plant, and I found a beautiful 4-level floor plan. I'm like, this is my dungeon map, done, we're good.
Well, seriously, I mean, you can do that for any game. There are times when we would be running Fandalia, and I woke up that morning and I was like, oh, I didn't plan the damn house. So I just Googled a house and it was like,
exactly.
That sure looks like a mansion. If that's not a kitchen and is instead a bedroom. Boom, done.
Done.
So yeah, and with that, we are at final thoughts.
Bam. So this one I think is just so important, just because your players will remember so much that cool thing they got out of the game. Like, their character got this awesome, amazing, super specific to them weapon that they got to use, and they got the coolest sword or the coolest bow or the coolest whatever, as long as you give it to them in time to use it before the final battle.
Nice. So yeah, I think the number one thing is just to try to keep it in theme and everybody having fun.
Exactly. Let them actually use stuff that's good for their character. And I've written on here, kind of the last thing is, instead of an item, can you give them an emotional or a social benefit instead? Like, does this character fall in love? Does one of those stupid NPCs you didn't even care about fall in love with one of the characters, and that's their new favorite part of the whole game? Beeble Bloop is now their favorite part because you gave them an emotional payoff.
Yup, better than Dobby. Dobby, whatever. It was Dobby when I was reading it, and then it was Dobby, and I'm like, who cares about this guy? No, oh, he got knifed, rad. Yeah, I'm heartless. All right, so hey guys, so that's gonna be it for us. We're gonna take a quick break, and we'll be right back with our next panel, which is good PC habits: how to be a good player character and make your DM's life better so he don't, or she don't, or they don't cry. And Tosh, are you in the... No, you're not. Okay. So yeah, do you have anything you want to say? This is the last... Oh, you're with us tonight for the No Prep game.
Yes, I am.
Oh God, don't tell me what you're going to be. So
I don't know what I'm going to be. That's one of the things I'm going to do while I'm not in the next panel.
Okay. Don't tell me what it is because I am doing my best not to prep
I literally can't.
anything. Good. All right. So, hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into this. If you enjoyed this panel, feel free to find us on Extra Life and give us a donation that goes not to us, but to kids who need money. We are going to be doing this all day. I will have the schedule up in just a second, and you'll be able to see that. Thank you so much for hosting this,
Also
Tasha.
follow me on Twitch. Check out my website, natashateskovich.com/linktree for my art Instagram, my fashion Instagram, my YouTube fashion channel and art channel. I do lots of many things because I'm ADD.
Yeah, like me. We should have had an ADD panel.
How to game when you're ADD as fuck.
It makes DMing a lot easier, I'll put it that way. Scheduling, not so much. We will see you next time in just a few minutes. Thank you so much, Tasha, for running this panel. And
thank you, Kelly, for helping me.
You're welcome. All right, we'll see you in a bit. Time to go to the other screen. Goodbye.